Oh man, it's finally time to head to the great outdoors.
You know how long I've been waiting for this?
We have almost 150 pros signed up for today. This is our race day update show where we go over all the injury updates, rider statistics, storylines from press day, the schedule, the weather, and everything else that you might need to know before the gate drops. So the first thing we're going to get into, like we always do, is our injury updates, and man, oh man, do we have quite the list to go through. So thankfully we do have a lot of guys returning from injuries, but this list will generally be longer than it was in Supercross since all of the 250 guys are racing each weekend. So I want to start things off on a positive note, so let's go with the guys that are returning to the series. Starting off in the 250 class, Ty Masterpool is returning from that broken finger situation. And that's really exciting to see because we did see him beat Hayden Deegan straight up a couple of times last season. He got Mitch Payton his 300th win at High Point, and then he also got that moto win against Hayden at Redbud. So it's really great to have him back. We know he can be a threat, and he should make things a lot more interesting. And we also have his teammate Levi Kitchen returning from that nasty crash that he had at Daytona. Another guy that can definitely add some really good depth to the field and be a race win contender. Then we have the Gas teammates of Casey Cochran and Ryder D Francisco returning to the series. Both riders have been back on the bike for a while now, and Ryder D even raced the Stopwatch Nationals. Then we have Nick Romano returning after taking a break from Supercross due to that knee injury. Doesn't sound like he got it repaired or anything like that, so he's likely still dealing with stability issues there. Hopefully he can stay healthy moving forward. Dylan Schwartz is returning for the BarX team. We did see him race one Supercross earlier in the year, but he's looking to be back to form for motocross. I'm really curious to see what he can do now that they switched to Yamaha. He looked pretty good outdoors on the Suzuki, but he looked great at Glen Helen on the Yamaha, so keep an eye on him as well. And then we also have another factory rider returning to the series. Styles Robertson is coming back from his wrist surgery for Team Triumph, so that'll also be really good to see. Not sure what to expect out of him, but we have seen him contend for moto wins before in the past. But with that being said, it has been a long time. Now I want to mention a few guys that are returning to the series, but not because of an injury. Jeremy Martin will be joining the entirety of the Pro Motocross season for Star Yamaha, and as you'll see later on in the injury updates, that's likely because a few of his now teammates will be out for either the entirety or most of the motocross season. Mikael Haarup is also going to be joining the series. He's riding for Team Triumph. We saw him ride for Triumph last year in MXGP in the MX2 class, but Triumph doesn't have a 450 for him to race in this year, and he did age out of that class. So he's coming over to the States to race for the entirety of the motocross season. And we also have a couple of pretty talented one-off riders this weekend. Enzo Timmerman will be out there on the Kawasaki, at least racing this weekend. It sounds like he might race one or two others later on in the year as well. And I also want to give a shout out to Cole Timboe. He will be out there for the BarX guys as well. Don't look for him to race the full schedule, but he will be out there. And there's also another guy to keep an eye on. Club MX's Alexander Fedorstov is making his full-time pro debut. We saw him win the SMX Next Championship in Supercross. He looked really good, so he'll be lining up along with Max Voland. Not sure exactly what's going on with Devin Simonson. He's not signed up right now. So it could be just Voland and Fedorstov signed up for Club MX in the 250 class at least, because Cody Schock is now in the 450 class. Moving on to the 450 class guys that are returning to the series, we have both of the Kawasaki guys. Jorge Prado is coming out. Looks like he's been riding for at least a little bit, returning from that shoulder surgery that he had to correct the dislocation that he suffered at Anaheim 2. Jason Anderson has also been back on the bike for a while now, and he looks fast. Not sure exactly where his fitness or desire is at, but the good thing is we should find out shortly. Then we have both of the Honda boys returning. The Lawrence brothers will be back. Surprisingly, Jet Lawrence has been able to recover from his ACL reconstruction in record time, so hopefully that will hold up for him. As far as Hunter Lawrence, he's been back on the bike a little bit longer, so you would argue that he might be a little bit more prepared. Both of these guys are really good here. Jet's never lost. Hunter got second here last year, so definitely don't underestimate them, even though they are just coming off of injury themselves. And then the one that I think a lot of people are most excited about, Eli Tomac will be here for the season opener. He's returning from that broken leg that he suffered by essentially running over the back of his leg by dragging his foot out of the corner. It's pretty hard not to get excited when we hear Eli Tomac talking about his season.
Time and prep that I've had, I would say I'm 100% coming into this race because I haven't had this much motocross prep in a long time. So I should have no excuse after, this first race or going into this first round. I've got no excuse. I've never had this much base prep coming into a motocross season. So I should be solid. One thing's for sure, I'm not done. And I'm looking to go racing again next year.
It's hard not to get your hopes up or at least get excited when you hear Eli talking about himself like that. And then we have another guy returning to the series. Derek Drake is still battling his Lyme disease, but sounds like he's in a much better place. Should be at least a few more months before he's really fully gotten rid of it. But he did lay down 2 very solid motos at Glen Helen, chasing Cold Nichols around. Really kept him honest. It looked like he had at least some really solid fitness. So hopefully he can be in there scoring some good points this season. And we also have a bunch of guys joining the class that were not injured, so we're going to go over those really quick. We have the Frenchman Benoit Paturel coming over, and he's going to be riding for the Twisted Tea Suzuki team. He's essentially Kyle Chisholm's replacement outdoors. We have the Swiss Valentin Guillod. It sounds like he's doing at least the first few races, but he is looking for a ride and to stay here. We did see Harry Kullas jump down to the 250 and try to race some Supercross, but he is now returning back to the 450 class and he'll be out there this weekend. Romain Pape is back as well. And then we have another Australian to keep an eye on this weekend. Mason Semmens is going to be on the 450. He's actually a KTM factory-based 250 off-road rider, but he's jumping up to the 450. He's actually really talented and has some pretty good fitness. So keep an eye on him. I would expect him to at least be in the points-paying positions as well. Then we also saw Team Wildcat Racing go out and sign Venezuelan Daniel Bortolin. And to be honest, I have no idea what to expect here, but just thought it was worth mentioning. And then I'm interested to see how South African champion Cameron Durrow can do. He races both 250s and 450s at the same time, and it seems like he generally wins everything over there in South Africa. So not sure exactly how that's going to translate over here. But even if it doesn't translate well, I thought it was an interesting storyline worth mentioning. Also, Josh Mosiman will be out there for motocross action on a Yamaha doing what he does. And now we got to talk about all the guys who are still out with their respective injuries. So first I want to talk about Talon Hawkins. Unfortunately, he did go down and break his femur earlier this year, and he will likely not be returning anytime because he announced his retirement. So at 21 years of age, Talon Hawkins is saying he's done with the sport. I look for him to probably still be on a bike and doing things, but don't look for him to be returning to professional racing. Then we have a bunch of Star Yamaha guys to talk about. So it sounds like Max Anstie is going in for leg surgery, with him only breaking his fibula in the crash. The tibia was still intact and they told him he did not need surgery. Turns out that he is going to end up needing to get surgery, so he's getting that done now. Unfortunately, that's a pretty big setback for him, so he will not be returning to the series anytime soon. We might not see him until SMX. Daxton Bennick is still recovering from those concussions. Sounds like we won't see him for at least a few rounds. Cole Davies obviously just got landed on by Jordan Smith, so he's still dealing with a broken nose and arm. And then Pierce Brown is still recovering from that gnarly back injury that he had at the start of Supercross. It sounds like we'll likely see Davies around mid-season, and Pierce Brown is still really unknown at this point. As far as Jalik Swoll, he's still recovering from that Achilles injury, but he's doing pretty well. He's back on the bike. He's looking to return around round 4 or 5, so not too far out in the future, definitely a little bit quicker than I was expecting. And then we have another rider with an Achilles injury that will be returning sometime this season. We saw Evan Ferry come out at the season opener of Supercross and actually look pretty solid, and then he ended up unfortunately tearing his Achilles. He's been out for the entire season so far. He's hoping to return by about Redbud. Then another rider that I was kind of hoping we would see back this weekend, but is still out, Carson Mumford. He's still recovering from that ankle injury. It does sound like he's getting pretty close to returning though, so that's definitely good to hear. Club MX's Jet Reynolds did try to ride, but unfortunately he's not quite feeling up to it just yet, so look for him to sit out a few more weeks as well. Sounds like he is going to be targeting Southwick as his return. On the 450 side, we did see that Ken Roczen went in for that ankle surgery. He's still recovering from that. Barcia is back pedaling his bike and things like that. He did actually enter the race, but it sounds like he will not be attending, so he's pretty close to being able to return, just not quite there yet. Dylan Ferrandis is out for the entire Pro Motocross Series with a stress fracture in his leg that he's getting worked out. And unfortunately, Mitchell Oldenburg did suffer a pelvis injury at the last round of Supercross, so he will not be attending any of the select motocross rounds that he was planning to attend. Next, let's go ahead and talk about some of the top riders in the 250 class and their storylines. There is a lot of guys in this class. As of the time of recording, there is about 80 people on the entry list, so definitely a stacked field, definitely a deep field. We're not going to get to every good rider in the field, so don't freak out if I don't talk about them. With that being said, at the top, obviously, we have Hayden Deegan. He went 1-1 here last year. He grew up around here. He is also your defending motocross champion. He'll be rocking that number 1 plate, and we'll see that number plate on that bike for quite a long time, because as we head to SMX, he'll get to run it there as well. And if he races 250 West in Supercross next season, he'll have it there as well. So we might not see the number 38 again until he goes into the 450 class. As far as Chance Hymas, he got off to a quiet start here last year. He went 4-5 in the motos, but we definitely saw him break out last season in motocross. I'll be really interested to see exactly how he can do this weekend. Does he have the speed right out of the gate? This track is quite a bit different than some of the other tracks in the series. But if he wants to be a true championship contender, I don't think he can be outside of the top 5 this weekend, and that would be pretty easy to do with how deep this field is. And then of course we have our other defending Supercross champion in Tom Vial, and he is out of this class after this series pretty much no matter what. He can no longer return to 250 Supercross, so I doubt that he'll return to 250 motocross, although we have seen riders like Justin Cooper do that in recent years. Even as recently as last year, we saw Joey Savaggi attempt something like that, but it didn't really work out very well for him. Anyways, Tom Vial is your 2-time MX2 world champion and now a 2-time Supercross champion, but we've yet to see him get any really good results outdoors. He did get 1 overall at Southwick in his rookie season, but last year almost seemed like a step backwards. So can he remount a charge as we go back outdoors? He knows the tracks, he knows the schedule. Can he get it done? That is the question that is yet to be answered. And then of course we have to keep an eye on Levi Kitchen. He did give Hayden Deegan the hardest time here last year. He went 2-2 behind him, and there was that whole protest where Deegan went off the track and Kitchen tried to get the overall from him, so that definitely sparked some drama early on in the series. It'll be interesting to see exactly who gets into a beef with Deegan first this season. Maybe it will be his teammate Ty Masterpool, who we saw come out here last season and make his pro circuit debut after approximately 1 hour on that bike. He had just signed a deal with the team the night before, essentially, but I don't really think this is his style of track. He definitely looked a little bit scary here last year. He did have flashes of speed, but he also crashed pretty hard. It's hard to say how much of that was him switching to a 250 at the last second, or how much of that was him just not really gelling with the track. Personally, I'm really excited to see how he does once we leave California and head up to like Thunder Valley and places like that. But with that being said, he might be able to be in some sort of title contention, maybe not for the overall title, but at least in the top 3. He was top 5 last year, so if he can at least get off to a much better start this year, that would definitely help that. Then we also have to keep an eye on the 2 Triumph riders we have not talked about yet, the first of which is Jordan Smith. He's never really been an outdoor guy. He was able to get through the majority of the season last year, which was good to see. I'm not really sure what to expect out of him, but I really don't think he'll be inside the top 10 this weekend. And then we have a huge question mark in Austin Faulkner. He was able to complete his first ever entire Supercross season this year, so shout out to him for being able to do that. It took him nearly a decade to accomplish that feat, but he has gone through a complete motocross season. He did that in just his rookie year, so hopefully he can replicate that and maybe show some signs of speed. I don't expect him to get on the podium or anything like that, but if he can just at least show some flashes, that would be really awesome to see. And then of course we have Tom Vial's teammate, Julian Beaumer. He definitely had a few moments where he was right there in the top 5 last season. Definitely not an amazing outdoor season last year, but he definitely started to show some really good speed come SMX, and he's definitely turned a corner in Supercross. Can he turn a corner in motocross? We're about to find out. And I almost forgot about the big man, Garrett Marchbanks. He had some pretty good results when he switched to pro circuit last year. He did that in the end part of motocross, and he was able to still get in there. So the concern was definitely that dropping down to the 250 in motocross would definitely be hard on him with the smaller bike and the size that he is, but he was able to make it work. so hopefully he can keep that going. He is on a 1-year deal, so he's going to need some good performances this season. He did have a couple good Supercross races, so if he can stay solid this motocross season, look for him to return to the team next year. And then of course we have Joe Shimoda, who is in a sketchy situation with his team, but for different reasons. He's had a falling out with the Lawrence brothers and the Wasserman group that manages them. He opted to stay with Lucas Myrtle, and that whole situation is falling apart very rapidly. So I wish all the best for Joe. Hopefully he can get some good results. We've seen him do really good in motocross before. That seems a little bit removed at this point, so hopefully he can get that back. And I somehow managed to forget a couple more pro circuit guys. So we also have Seth Hamaker, who feels like he got absolutely robbed of a Supercross championship. Hopefully he can have some really good outdoor results this year. I'm really not sure what to expect out of him. He's definitely had speed outdoors in the past, but it's been a very long time since we've seen that. And then we have the young Drew Adams making his first full-time pro motocross debut this weekend. He did race one race last year where I believe he got 12th overall, so definitely somebody who could be in there as well. And then we have another factory guy in Nate Thrasher, who actually looked pretty good in motocross last year, but he was dealing with that collarbone injury, I believe it was. Either way, he didn't get very far into the season, but while he was out there, he did actually look pretty good, especially considering he was riding injured. With that being said, we all know that his riding is pretty hit and miss, and with how deep this field is already, I'm really not sure what to expect out of him. And the same can be said for his teammate Michael Mosiman. We've seen him almost get some moto wins and things like that in the past, but it's been years since that, and it doesn't seem like he's riding as confident since he had that neck injury. The ceiling for Mosiman is pretty high, but the floor is also pretty low. I could see him getting all the way as far back as outside the top 15, but I could also believe you if you told me he was going to get a top 5. And then I also want to give a shout out to Mark Phineas, who did end up leaving Club MX, but he kind of went a little under the radar here last year. He got 12th overall in what was essentially his pro debut, which I thought was pretty awesome. So it would seem that he does gel with this track. Don't expect anything crazy out of him, but don't be surprised if you see him ahead of a lot of these other guys that you would not expect him to be ahead of. Then I also want to mention Phoenix Racing's Gavin Towers. He'll be out there doing his best as well. Definitely going to be a battle for him to get up inside the points, but it's still cool to see him out there. Then we have another cool story with Bar X grabbing Parker Ross. So we saw him do really good in his rookie Supercross season on that Honda, and now he's switching over to Bar X so he can continue to compete in pro motocross. He looks pretty solid, not sure where his 30-minute moto fitness is, but the speed looks decent, so keep an eye on him as well. And then moving on to the 450 class, man, this field is looking just as stacked. We got Cooper Webb, your defending Supercross champion. He'll be out there. We haven't seen any great results out of Cooper Webb in motocross for a very long time, but if you look back at the history books, you'll see that he did go toe-to-toe with Jeremy Martin in his prime and took a 250 motocross title from him, and he has won 450 overalls in the past. With that being said, I definitely don't expect that from him right now, but it's still really cool to see him going out there and sending it. And then of course we have Beast Mode, his teammate, and like you saw at the start of the video, really good things coming out of his mouth. He seems confident, he seems ready to go, and I am so excited to see what he can do. And then of course we have the number 1 plate, Chase Sexton, coming out as well. Definitely somebody who could give everybody a problem. Not really sure what to expect out of him. Maybe some crashes, maybe some wins, hopefully a championship contender. And then we have his newly re-signed teammate, Aaron Plessinger. He's actually been really rock solid in motocross the last few years. He tends to finish all of the motos, generally speaking, and usually end up top 5 in the points. We saw him almost get that moto win at Hangtown last year. Definitely don't expect that for him. Look for him to be just outside the top 5 most likely. And then of course we have the Lawrence brothers. Jet and Hunter went 1 and 2 here last year. That was really cool to see for them. Now they're both coming off of an injury. Jet's never lost here, so I wouldn't expect him to do too bad. I'm curious to see if anyone can stop that streak. Definitely would be the time to do it this year with him coming off of that ACL reconstruction. But even with all of that being said, I'm not sure he can be stopped. And then we have your defending MXGP champion in Jorge Prado. With him, I really don't know what to expect. We've never seen him race motocross on this bike, and we've never really seen him go toe-to-toe with all of these guys. I'm curious to see how he handles the literal heat later on in the season as we get into the summer and some of these tracks get really hot. I don't expect anything really impressive from him this weekend, but maybe he can rip some of his notorious hole shots. And if that's the case, maybe we do see something spectacular. Then of course we have the Husqvarna teammates of RJ Hampshire and Malcolm Stewart. Malcolm rode the majority of motocross last season, so that was really good to see. He just signed with FXR. Really good things going on there with their fishing partnership. And RJ is just coming off his wrist surgery. We've seen him do really good in 250 motocross. Hopefully that translates to 450s, but like I said, this field is looking pretty deep. And then another guy that I would argue is probably going to be ahead of them is Justin Cooper. We've seen him do really good in motocross. He's also generally a very good starter. He's another guy who could give these people some problems. I don't expect him to be able to hold off guys like Jet or Chase or even Eli, but he could definitely get a better start than them and make their charge towards the front a little bit harder. And here's another one that I thought was pretty interesting. Joey Savacci is going to be going racing with the Quadlock Honda team. We've seen him do pretty good in motocross, at least on the 250s back in the PC days. Hopefully that can translate to some pretty good results. I believe he had a Kawasaki factory fill-in ride where he did some motocross and did pretty well. But other than that middle part of the Supercross season where he got hurt and missed a couple of rounds, he's been stacking points pretty good, and I'm curious to see how much of this motocross season he races. If he keeps that going, he should be pretty far up in the seeding come the SMX Championship. Interestingly, his Quadlock teammate Shane McElrath is not slated to do any motocross rounds, but that could definitely change if he starts to fall pretty far back in the standings. And then I also want to give a shout out to Freddie Noren. He's always really good in motocross. He did earn that number 33 last year, and that's because he absolutely crushed it outdoors. Look for him to be consistently scoring points and maybe even battling for some top 10s even with this stacked field. I also have to shout out the Suzuki boys of Colt Nichols and Benoit Paturel. I'm honestly not sure which one of them is going to do better. Nichols looked really solid at Glen Helen, and Paturel is an established rider as well, so it's going to be interesting to see. I do expect them to be pretty similar in results. If I had to pick, I'd probably give a slight edge to Nichols as he's already been over here, he's used to the bike, and he's used to the tracks. And then I also think it's worth keeping tabs on Grant Harlan. We saw him have a great motocross season in 2023, where he ended up earning his number all the way down in the 20s, but he definitely regressed a little bit after suffering that gnarly injury at Motocross of Nations, and we haven't seen him really be able to return to that same form. Hopefully he can get some of that back this season, so let's keep an eye on that. Before we go over all of our rider statistics, I want to go over the weather and the track conditions. So the weather is looking great. It's about a high of 75, so not too hot considering where it's at. The track crew did make some pretty big changes this year. They got rid of the big step up that we're used to seeing after the start straight, and a few of the turns are in different places. To me personally, the track does look a little bit simple and maybe one line, so we'll have to see exactly how that plays out. As far as the schedule, Race Day Live will be on Peacock at 1 o'clock Eastern. The motos themselves will be kicking off at 1:15 local time, 2:15 local time, then 3:30 local time, and 4:30 local time. They do have a whole halftime show now in between the Moto 1s and Moto 2s. Now, getting into our rider statistics, we do have some interesting things to look at right here. I try to go over this each and every week if you guys are betting or just playing fantasy. So the first rider we're going to talk about is the one that a lot of you are probably putting down to win, and that is going to be Jet Lawrence. Looking at his stats, he's really good here at Paula. He has won 11 out of the 14 motos, including the races that he's done in the 250 class, and he's never lost an overall here. It's hard to say exactly how that all plays into him coming fresh off of this ACL reconstruction, but it's definitely hard to bet against him. As far as Eli Tomac, he's also really good here. He has the most 450 overall wins out of anybody in the field, and he was the last guy to get a win here before Jet Lawrence showed up. He also has 32 career overall motocross wins, which is pretty high up there on the list, and he's been on the bike since April and says he has no excuses. He's feeling good. This is the most prep he's ever had for motocross, so definitely cannot count him out either. And Chase Sexton also has 2 overall wins at Paula. He's really good here as well. He has an average finish of 2.33, and he did finish 3rd here behind the Lawrence brothers last year. Another guy who you're probably going to consider putting in that podium range, Jorge Prado. He is your 2-time and defending MXGP champion. In those championships, he had a win percentage of 33%, but more impressively, he got 18 hole shots last year. Now, we haven't really seen much out of him on this Kawasaki, and we really haven't ever seen him race American motocross, so you could probably throw some of that out the window, but keep in mind he's a very good starter, very good racer, but he's also coming fresh off of a shoulder surgery, and he's on a new bike in a new system, so who really knows? Looking at Hunter Lawrence, he finished second overall last year in the championship, and he finished second overall here last year. So he's definitely somebody that could get in there and get on the podium. He's also coming off of a shoulder injury, but he's been on the bike a lot longer than Jet. He has a lot of experience racing this chassis and platform from motocross last year that Jet does not have. Also, Hunter was on the podium 9 out of the 11 rounds last year. So don't sleep on his motocross talent. The field is a little bit deeper this year, but he's probably still going to be on the podium quite a bit. As far as Aaron Plessinger goes, he's also had a couple of pretty consistent and good motocross seasons. Just last year, he did get 6 podiums in motocross, so he knows how to get it done. But he was also 8th here last year with 312 in the motos. So personally, I can't really put him ahead of any of these other guys statistically, but it was some good starts and maybe a little bit of luck. He could definitely be somebody that could be an outside contender for a podium as well. Looking at Justin Cooper, I don't expect him to be a top 5 threat, at least not here. He did get 6th overall with a 5.8 moto score, but even with that, he only scored a couple of podiums last year. So while I do think he is a very capable rider, generally does get good starts and is great at motocross, I really don't think in this field he'll be a top 5 contender, especially not here at this track. And then as far as his teammate Cooper Webb, we really don't have much to go off of as far as motocross goes. Obviously, we just saw him win the Supercross Championship, which looks great. But the last time we saw him come out for motocross was when he came back for that one-off race at Unadilla. And he ended up crashing out of Moto number 2, so we really only have Moto number 1 to work with. Looking at that moto, he did finish 8th. So that was right behind Roczen and ahead of guys like Christian Craig, Malcolm Stewart, and a few others. So hypothetically, in that field, if you remove Ken Roczen and Dylan Ferrandis, and then you add back in Jet, Eli, and Jorge Prado, that would sit him around 9th place. With all that being said, he was just returning from injury in that race. There wasn't much on the line, and it really doesn't translate as far as that track to this track. So it's really a big question mark, but I really don't expect him to be anywhere near the top 5, maybe 6th through 12th. As far as Malcolm Stewart goes, he's never had any amazing motocross results, but he also hasn't missed a race since he came back in 2024. Looking at his results from last year, his best finish was 6th place, and he did get 9th here last year, so I definitely don't expect him to be top 5. Maybe he would be a good wildcard pick for 10th. As far as Jason Anderson, there are some compelling things as far as his statistics. He did finish 5th in the championship last year. He was right behind Justin Cooper in the points, so really not that far off. He was in the top 5 6 times and even got a podium. Last year, he did get 7th here, but that was with 10 and 4 moto scores, so he does have the capability to run well here. Looks like he just struggled in that first moto. Next, I quickly want to just put some perspective on how deep the 450 field is. We already kind of talked about the 250 field, and there's so many guys in that class that it's really just impossible to put it into full perspective. The 450 class only has about 60 entries, so it's a little bit easier to digest. And what I want to point out is that only the top 20 pay points in the race. So even though there's a 40 rider field, there's going to be quite a few good riders that are not going to get points this weekend. We could easily see guys like Romain Pape, Derek Kelly, Lorenzo Locorcio, Max Miller, Matty Jorgensen, and even Mitchell Harrison all go without scoring points. And that might sound kind of crazy because all those guys are really good. And I'm sure some of them will score points. But my point is, there's 20 other guys besides that you could definitely make an argument that could finish ahead of them. And we could even see guys like Colt Nichols as far back as 15th, and guys like Cody Schock maybe even back like 17th or 18th. And obviously this is really just speculation and opinion. All these guys are capable of doing well, and nobody really knows for sure where they're going to stack up. But going off of past results and momentum and things like that, we can kind of build a list of where things might go. And that is exactly what I did. I built a list of my top 20. So I'm just going to quickly read through that. And keep in mind that everybody that I named off at the start of this is not even in the top 20. So we have Jet Lawrence, Chase Sexton, Eli Tomac, Hunter Lawrence, Jorge Prado, Justin Cooper, Aaron Plessinger, and then in 8th, Cooper Webb, 9th, Jason Anderson, and 10th, Malcolm Stewart. So just like that, we already filled out the entire top 10. We haven't even talked about RJ Hampshire, Freddie Noren, Joey Savacci, Colt Nichols, Valentin Guillod. So if I told you somebody like RJ Hampshire wasn't inside the top 10, you'd probably consider that a bit of a bad result for him. But at the same time, if all these guys beat him, I think that's understandable. Anyways, moving on to 11th, that's where I do have RJ Hampshire, so he's right there. Then Freddie Noren, Joey Savacci, Valentin Guillod, Colt Nichols, Benoit Paturel, Cody Schock, Harry Kullas, Derek Drake, and then Mason Semmens. Now you might think that I'm kind of crazy for putting Mason Semmens into the points ahead of some of these other established motocross guys, and maybe I am, but I really think that he does have an advantage. He's raced here many times before in an off-road type setting, but he does know the dirt, and his fitness is crazy. We saw him race both classes, 250 and 450, on Saturday at Glen Helen, and he beat all those guys, Grant Harlan, Romain Pape, and it wasn't like a big issue for him. He worked his way up through the field. And keep in mind, that was after he already raced the 250 twice as well. So as long as he doesn't get absolutely destroyed off of the start, I think he will definitely be inside the top 20. But I just wanted to make this segment because I think it's so easy to say like, oh yeah, Jason Anderson, he should be a top 5 guy. Malcolm Stewart, yeah, he'll be top 5. Jorge Prado, he'll be podium. You know, Justin Cooper, top 5. Aaron Plessinger, top 5. Cooper Webb, top 5. RJ Hampshire, top 5. That's already, you know, we're at 11 guys. They can't all be in the top 5. So it could be a lot of fun to see exactly how all these guys shake up. I think the top 5 is definitely pretty well established, but we could get a lot of mixture there in the second half of the top 10. But looking at this list, the depth is pretty strong all the way back to 11th or 12th. So if you're somebody like Jet, Chase, or Eli, and you're going for overalls or the championship, and you go down on the opening lap and have to come through all these guys, it is going to be a lot harder than what we're used to seeing. Granted, I would expect them to get around most of these guys, but like I said, it's just going to be a little bit harder. And I think the same principle could be applied to the 250 class, but it's just even crazier, especially this weekend in particular with a lot of one-off 250 amateurs that are really fast. And now that we got that out of the way, if you guys are still watching this far into the video, I'm likely either on my way to Paula right now, or I'm already there shooting video, doing my best. What you guys are looking at right now is a video from last year. I was able to get some of this uploaded before the race time, try to bring you guys some first-hand coverage. So if that is something you are interested in, make sure you check out the channel. Get subscribed if you're not already. There's a good chance that there might already be some videos up right now. I really appreciate each and every one of you that have stuck around so far into the video. It really helps me out a lot, and I'm trying my best to bring you guys the best motocross content that I can. And if you're still looking for more ways to fill the time before, say, Race Day Live or the kickoff of racing, feel free to check out the Moto Stories playlist where we have a lot of cool stories that I've put together. I'm personally pretty proud of those as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.